story.
Last month, we surveyed the women at Roboyo to understand how their experience here compared to their previous workplaces. While Roboyo stood out as a better workplace across all areas surveyed, the insights we gathered were both eye-opening and deeply important. 44% of women have experienced significant gender-based discrimination or bias at some point in their career. 60% believe that career advancement opportunities are not equally available to men and women. 67% feel their gender has significantly impacted how they were perceived or treated throughout their careers. Perhaps most tellingly, not a single woman surveyed felt that gender equality or bias in the workplace had been completely addressed. Here are some of their stories. Please meet our speakers, Frida, Joannie, Anuschka, and Ruth.
My story is about a transgression that happened to me a long time ago at another company. I was very young, and at a business party I was harassed by one of the executives. He insisted that I would come back with him to his hotel room, and I pretty clearly showed my disinterest in it. I got some pushback from him, but I was able to remove myself safely from the situation, and fortunately that went well. I went home and I had this pit in my stomach about having to go back to work on Monday. And as I did, the first thing I did was to take my manager to the side and tell him what happened. And his first words were, and I will never forget this, "He's very respected in this company. Do not repeat any of this ever to anyone." And that was the end of the conversation. And although the behavior of the executive is unacceptable, to some extent the lack of support from my manager was worse in terms of how long it stuck with me. I was just stunned on how badly he handled that situation, and the instant knee-jerk reaction to jump into defense and to silence me. But he had no interest in listening at all or acting on the issue in any type of way. So I left immediately. I quit the company that day, because if they didn't even have a second of concern for my safety and well-being, then I had no interest in making them any money. So there wasn't any path forward from there.
This is my story. I have always wanted to be someone who worked and to achieve things, and always believed that hard work gets you far. Being a woman in the workplace has been challenging at times. I think some of the most difficult situations I think you can be in when you're asked to present to sort of quite a large audience. And I think when you begin to do that in the beginning, it can be extremely difficult until you build up the confidence to know that you are able to stand in a room full of people. And it was probably one of the biggest challenges with one big account that I worked on with a large corporate organisation. And I did do part of the presentation on my own, but again, there was other people involved in it. But that was sort of quite a difficult time. Being a woman in the workplace, it can be challenging, but I think you just have to trust the people around you, and I think you just have to be honest and have integrity. And I think if you are struggling with something difficult, whether it's a confidence-related issue, a health issue, I think you just have to be honest and speak to the people around about you, and look for support from colleagues and workmates.
My story is about a professional and personal challenge I faced. At that time, I was reporting to several people across the organization I was working for. Everything broke down the day my mom called me to tell me she had been diagnosed with cancer and needed surgery soon. I knew I had to be there for her, so I called the manager I felt would be most supportive. And together, we designed a plan that would allow me to continue performing at work while also going back to my birth country to support my mother. I approached this other executive I was kind of reporting to with this flexible plan that included remote working, unpaid legal leave, and holidays. I assured him that my responsibility wouldn't be impacted and I had a clear plan for that. Despite this, he accused me of lying, claiming my mom wasn't sick at all and that I just wanted time off. He ultimately threatened me to deny the holidays and the legal unpaid leave. He used his status to coerce me, telling me I was being irresponsible, considering the responsibility he, not the company, he had given me. I tried to reason with him, explaining the gravity of the situation, but it was pointless. I tried to resist, even protested, pointing out that it wasn't even legal to refuse a legal unpaid leave. He looked me in the eyes and said, "You really think you can tell me what I can or cannot do?" As if he was above justice. He went on saying horrible things, shouting at me, calling me dangerous, untrustworthy, vicious. And the more I tried to stand up for myself, the more he insulted me and tried to lower my self-esteem.
As a woman in tech, I've often experienced that my expertise was questioned from the start, while male colleagues were automatically given credibility. There were situations where I walked into meetings and was met with remarks like, "Oh, today with a female support," or subtle skepticism about my skills, even in areas where I had extensive expertise. So I once brought a male trainee with me to a client meeting, and despite being the senior expert, the client consistently addressed him instead of me, assuming he had more experience simply because he was a man. Later in a leadership role, I witnessed firsthand how opportunities were distributed unequally. A male colleague who started around the same time as I did received more exposure, being invited to industry events, client meetings, and internal discussions that I was excluded from. Initially, I assumed this was due to him being on site while I worked remotely. However, when a leadership opportunity arose, he was promoted while I was assigned a manager who on top lacked expertise in my field, resulting in a situation where I not only had to train my own supervisor, but also had to navigate unnecessary obstacles in my daily work. Even when I eventually earned a leadership role, the recognition for my efforts was noticeably different. So that means while my male colleagues were celebrated for their achievements, my contributions felt like they were taken for granted. And one of the most striking experiences was when I was finally invited to represent the company at an industry event, only to find out that I was a last-minute replacement for my male colleague who couldn't make it.
What was the impact on you, and how did you overcome the situation?
The impact was they lost me. The way the manager handled it, it made me feel so small and unvalued in the company. And I left with my head high, and I found spaces where I was valued, where I felt safe and could grow. And I guess once you come out of a toxic space and take a breath of fresh air, you realize how bad the previous air was and how bad it impacted you. So, but standing up for yourself and honoring yourself is such a rewarding feeling. And I think I grew a little bit taller that day. And since then, I've learned more and more to notice these signals, and it has made me quite protective of others when I'm starting to catch the red flags. And I find myself sort of watching over people. And I really want to become the type of leader that I wished and the type of person that I wished I had in that moment. And I took it upon myself to learn from my manager's lack of leadership, to learn from his bad example, and to learn how to show up for someone when they entrust in me, and also how to work proactively against this happening.
What was the impact on me, and how did I overcome the situation? I think, again, it was just looking for support and help for other people round about you. I think when you work in an organisation, you're all working towards hopefully the same end goal, and everybody wants you to succeed. Nobody likes to see people fail in things. So I think it's believing in yourself, having the confidence, and if you have an issue or a difficulty, I think it's asking people for help. And I think don't ever be afraid. There's the famous saying, the only thing you fear is fear itself. And if you're going to do something difficult, you will be nervous. It's quite natural to get the butterflies in your stomach and stress levels go up. But I think the thing is, it's more the sense of achievement when you've achieved something that you thought was going to be impossible. It's just it's so rewarding. And the thing is, the more you put yourself forward for things, the more that you realise you are able to do. I think the impact that sort of winning that large account had on me, it sort of consolidated the fact that I knew I could achieve good things in business when you put your mind to it, the planning, the preparation. And I think that was what was important. And I think, again, when you're in a situation when you're competing against other organisations, it's making yourself stand out and what are the differentiators that make you different, whether it is just being a woman. Sometimes that can in itself be quite important.
The impact was huge. I felt so small, so powerless. I broke down and burst into tears right there in front of him. It was one of the most humiliating moments of my life. I felt like kind of crushed under the weight of his authority and the way he was speaking to me, and also my own suffering. It was clearly a bad moment for me, both professionally and personally. I took a medical leave and went to see a lawyer to sue them. This was probably my darkest period. I was pretty much a zombie, having lost my ego, my confidence in humanity, and I was so afraid of losing my mom. For a while, I thought the trial would fix everything, but the employment market was not good in my field. And I didn't even feel like I could search for another job. I was too afraid that it would end up being a new professional trauma. So I did something crazy. One day before the trial, I called it off and went back to work. It was terrifying because everyone knew something had happened, but nobody knew what, actually. I felt ashamed because from an outsider perspective, it looked like I had abandoned my job. I didn't want to talk about it to anybody because I didn't want to affect their view of the company. After all, it was my experience, not theirs. Everyone thought I came back with no intention of working out. I was also scared of seeing him again. But I went back, worked hard, and delivered impactful projects. And when I crossed his path, I looked him straight in the eyes with no shame. That helped me rebuild my ego and my self-confidence. And when I felt like I was finally back on my feet, I just left.
These experiences shaped my perspective on leadership and resilience. I learned that as a woman in tech, I often had to prove my competence repeatedly while men were granted automatic trust. At times, I began questioning whether I needed to change my approach, being more assertive, more accommodating, or adjusting my communication style. So I trained myself to remain composed, to give feedback in a calm and rational manner, yet the response was often contradictory. So I was too cold, too harsh, too direct. However, if I expressed disagreement in a more emotional way, I was perceived as difficult or too sensitive. So over time, I stopped adapting to expectations that constantly shifted. Instead, I focused on delivering results, building strong teams, and supporting others facing similar struggles. Despite the challenges, I am proud of the career that I've built and the impact I continue to make.
How can men and women support women in these situations?
I think it would be helpful to support women in a similar situation or anyone who is harassed in this way to make sure that you as a manager know how to act in these situations. And I've seen and experienced so many similar stories, and the way they get handled makes a massive difference in how inflamed and how much of a blow up it becomes. In the same way that we all have a duty to know to each other, to know how to do CPR and how to act in case there's a fire, it is the duty of a leader to know how to manage situations like this. What you do, what you say, and what you don't say. Because when someone confides in you, you do not have much time to search up any answers on how to deal with it, because the next words you say it holds so much weight. And I still remember it clear as day, what he said and even the clothes he was wearing in the situation. And managers need to be prepared that the person who is being accused, they might be your friend. It might be someone who is very much your senior. It can be a very sensitive and difficult situation. And not knowing in advance is quite the risk, because if you mess up, it will make it 100 times worse. And considering the statistics of how often this happens, it's a bit reckless not to know. And I might have been able to salvage the relationship with the company if they manage it properly. But the reaction and inaction of the leader was a letdown that I could not move past.
I think it's much easier nowadays to be a woman in the workplace than 20, 30 years ago, or even before that when I started out. Because everybody understands, like with most men in business, they have partners, they have wives, they have daughters, they have mothers. So they do understand things from a woman's point of view and everything a woman goes through in her life. So whether it is from periods, having children, going through the menopause, all of these things, for me, it was challenging. I think for some people have an easier journey than others. But again, it's just having that honesty to speak up about it and to not feel embarrassed about it, because we're all human beings. We all have the same bodies, emotions, feelings, thoughts that go through our head. A lot of us experience the same things in life. So it is talking to people around about you, men and women who have gone through those things, or they know people that have gone through menopause, difficult situations. And I think it's just all about having balance in life. And I think it's great to see so many men nowadays going to pick their children up from school, taking part in family life, because you realise as you get older, they're very precious moments. There's not many of them, and you have to make the most of them.
After the meeting with the executive, I called the manager who had initially supported me to tell him everything. He was horrified by what had happened, and he assured me that he would escalate the issue to the board to get it fixed. He promised me to call me before I took the leave and even contacted a lawyer. But the day after, I received a very generic email from him stating that the company backed up the executive. It felt like such betrayal. And he had supported me in making the request but left me alone to handle the fallout. This exposed me to an abusive situation, a clear management mistake, and he didn't support me when it mattered the most. I know deep down that this man is a very good person and probably got shut down by the board, and that he probably felt powerless too, but still it felt like a double betrayal, and it hurts even more. Where am I going with this? Not all men are narcissistic on power trips. But if you are not willing to step up against abusive behavior, you are complicit in allowing it to continue. We need accountability at all levels of management. We need people who will stand up against abuse and support vulnerable people. It's not enough to be good. We must also be brave.
First, we need to acknowledge that these biases exist even when they're unintentional. Many men I have worked with didn't recognize how women in tech face additional barriers until they saw it happen firsthand. One of the most impactful experiences I had was when a former manager openly recognized the issue after witnessing a client making inappropriate remarks about me, like being blonde. So he actively supported me in that situation, making it clear that this behavior would not be tolerated. We need more of these allies, people who challenge outdated mindsets and create environments where women don't have to fight twice as hard to be taken seriously. It's not about giving women a special treatment. It's about ensuring they receive the same respect and opportunities as their male counterparts.
What would you recommend to women in the same situation?
My recommendation is find someone you can trust to support and guide you, get help, and dare to speak up. If you can't find anyone around you that you can trust, you need to find a way out of there and pay attention to the overall culture of the company and what is allowed to pass. I've found that usually any transgression that happens is not the first sign, but it's in accordance with a pattern of what is overall permitted as a behavior in the organization. And if leaders are the offenders, or if leaders are passive when someone is acting out of line, consider if there is a path of growth from this, because I do not see that turning around easily. And know your worth. And if you can remove yourself from the situation where you're not being valued or appreciated, then you do that and stay safe.
Something else that I would recommend for women, whether you're young, old, going through the menopause, is exercise. Very important. For the last 15 years, I've taken up yoga in quite a serious way. People call me the bendy lady because of the amount of yoga that I do. But I think for anybody, it's finding an exercise that you enjoy. So whether it's walking, dancing, whatever that exercise is, we all need to get our heart rate pumping and get the good hormones going around in your body. I would recommend that for any woman of any age. I think, keeping fit and healthy is very important for yourself and for all of those that you look after as well.
My recommendation is don't waste your energy trying to convince an abuser that you're right and they're wrong. Their behavior likely stems from something illogical, and trying to explain yourself will only leave you feeling broken and defeated. We need to understand that the root of their actions is too deep and unreachable, especially if you're the victim. So don't even try because it's pointless. I also believe it's important to keep our egos well balanced. Our self-esteem should always align with our competencies, neither too high nor too low. But when someone with power attacks you, it throws your balance off and damages your ego. So my second piece of advice is to focus on recovering your ego as fast as possible. Make sure that in the future, you can look back and be proud on how you handled the situation. For me, going back to work and facing the trauma was hard and reckless, but it helped me rebuild myself, and now I'm really proud of my journey.
My recommendation is know your worth and don't let anyone define your capabilities for you. The reality is, you will sometimes need to work twice as hard for the same recognition, but that does not mean that you're worth less. Find mentors, people who will push you and remind you of your own value when you started out yourself. Surround yourself with a strong support system and don't be afraid to advocate yourself. And most importantly, never, never, ever shrink yourself to fit into an environment that does not appreciate your strengths. If a place doesn't value you, create your own opportunities and find a space that does.
Share with us some inspirational quotes.
Astrid Lindgren is a Swedish icon and one of my favorite people. She created a character that I think is one of the first female role models in life for a lot of us, which is Pippi Långstrump, Pippi Longstocking. And she was just such a wise woman and made a great impact in her life and has a legacy that lives on till this day. And everything, as the quote says, everything is made up by someone. Why couldn't that someone be you? We don't need to accept how things are as the permanent state because everything is made up. Of course we can change it.
A quote from me that I've taken and carried through was just a takeaway remark that somebody said to me one day when I knew it was going to be a difficult day. There was challenges with staff, there was a presentation, there was various meetings. We all have difficult days at work. And his comment to me was, the day will come and go just like all the others, which made me realise that nothing is permanent. But I think for me, it's all about how you prepare for that day, for the difficult situations. A lot of it is around your planning and your preparation. We can all overthink things, but I think for me, just to have a quote that you can live your life by. I also tend to put quotes up on my wall, quotes come and go, but that's one that really has stuck with me and it's resonated. And when I'm having a difficult time, I just think the day will come and go like the others. So I think for me, that's it. It's just being calm, collected, and knowing that you will get through it.
Originally, we are giving people power to protect and serve our community's best interest. It is applied within company too. Leaders should always see themselves as protectors. However, power can be seductive, leading some to misuse it. With great power comes great responsibility. Reminds leaders to use their power to serve, like Spider-Man or any other superhero.
This quote resonates with me because strength and kindness aren't opposites. They're powerful together. In leadership, you can be decisive and strategic while leading with empathy. So in my opinion, true influence, it comes from balancing both.
And now it's time to give thanks.
I want to thank my mom. She taught me to work hard, take care of people around me, honor your word, and always say thank you. And she always supported me in any crazy idea I had to let me become my own person and forge my own path.
Someone that I admire is a friend of mine's mother who was very kind to me. I lost my parents when I was quite young, and they took me in, showed me absolute kindness, looked after me, showed me all the good things there, the good way to live your life, to be happy, how to enjoy things. And it was amazing. They never expected anything in return. And I think I've always appreciated that kindness, and it taught me a lot about life because they were pretty successful. And it was just something to aspire to. So definitely that's somebody that I remember from a very long time ago and has inspired me ever since.
I want to thank my mom. It would take me ages to tell you her life story and what she's been through. To give you a short sample, at 28, she was already a widow, coming out of an abusive relationship and a mother of 3 little girls aged from 9 to 2 years, with just nothing, no job, no career, no financial resources. Despite the judgment from others, she went back to school, built a career, and met a good man. At first, she did everything to remain financially independent until she was sure she could build a life with him. And ultimately, he adopted us. They built a small business together, and they've been together for 33 years now. So what she told me is that there is no equity in life experiences, but she taught me an important skills to compensate for it, which is resilience. She's fierce, she's a true warrior, and she's my hero. And she defeated cancer.
I want to thank my mentor, my brother, who's been instrumental in my journey. Not only has he always been inspiring me with his ambition and resilience, he's also been there to push me beyond my limits and challenge me to reach new heights. Your guidance and belief in me have played a key role in shaping my career. Thank you.